Coming up on Arirang News, still no winner in the U.S. presidential election. Democrat Joe Biden has a lead over President Trump, but Republicans are mounting legal challenges in the battleground states to get access to the ballot counting and to disqualify ballots they say are invalid. Researchers in South Korea say they expect the local economy would benefit more from a win for Joe Biden because of his more multilateral approach to trade. And President Moon Jae-in pledges South Korea's commitment to overcoming the COVID-19 pandemic through multilateral cooperation. He was speaking Friday to international guests at this year's Jeju Forum. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. It's been 2 days since the polls closed in the U.S. presidential election, but there's still no clear winner. The Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, appears to be in the lead by CNN's count with 253 electoral votes, while President Trump has 213. CNN and other broadcasters have yet to project a winner in 6 different states. Nevada and Arizona have Biden in the lead, while Trump is leading in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Alaska. In Georgia, Trump is still ahead, but by less than 1,000 votes. The Trump campaign is filing lawsuits in several states to disqualify certain ballots, in some cases to stop counting and to get closer access to the counting process. Those efforts are having mixed results, though. Han Sung-woo has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump has lost his legal fights in Georgia and Michigan. Judges for each state on Thursday local time tossed the Trump campaign's lawsuits out, citing lack of evidence. In the Georgia case, the Trump campaign alleged that ballots which arrived late had been mixed with those that came on time. And in Michigan, where CNN projects Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden to have won, Trump had sought to suspend vote counting and gain better access to the tallying process. The rulings came as Biden inches closer to the 270 Electoral College votes needed to enter the White House. Not willing to give up easily, Trump and his campaign are pushing for even more legal action, most notably in Nevada.
We firmly believe that there are many voters in this group of mail-in people that are not proper voters. In the last many days, we have received reports of many irregularities across the valley. We believe that there are dead voters that have been counted.
But no evidence to support their claims of irregularities was given, and campaign officials did not answer questions from reporters. Despite the possibility of more appeals, experts are saying that Trump's legal strategy is unlikely to have a decisive impact on the outcome of the election. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korean President Moon Jae-in has vowed his administration's utmost efforts to overcome the global pandemic through multilateral cooperation. In a keynote address Friday to this year's Jeju Forum on Korea's southern resort island, the president said South Korea will be giving extra assistance and attention to those most vulnerable to the pandemic and its wider effects. Seoul will be giving $10 million to the COVAX Advanced Market Commitment, the international project to develop and distribute vaccines. President Moon also highlighted that peace and prosperity in Northeast Asia cannot be achieved without peace on the Korean peninsula. South Korea's National Security Advisor Seo Hoon held a virtual meeting on Friday with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts, telling them that there needs to be efforts to resume dialogue between the U.S. and North Korea now that the presidential election is over. The three discussed denuclearization and peace on the Korean peninsula. They agreed that diplomatic and security cooperation should continue no matter the result of the election. They also agreed to strengthen their cooperation on a COVID-19 vaccine as well as on the development and distribution of treatments. The three plan to hold an in-person meeting soon if the situation allows. A new expressway will open this Saturday, running from Seoul northwest to the city of Munsan. It's about 35 kilometers long with 4 to 6 lanes. It's expected to substantially reduce traffic in northwestern Gyeonggi-do province. Construction started in November 2015 and it cost about $1.9 billion. To drive the whole length of it, there's a toll of 2,900 won, or about $2.60. The Transport Ministry says it hopes the highway can be the gateway to the North Korean capital of Pyongyang, should the two Koreas decide to resume their economic cooperation. Major foreign investment banks have raised South Korea's GDP growth forecast for this year on growing expectations for an economic recovery. As of the end of October, 9 foreign investment banks, including J.P. Chase and Goldman Sachs, predicted on average that South Korea's economy will shrink by 1.2% in 2020. That was an improvement from a month earlier of 0.2 of a percentage point. Of the 10 Asian countries they gave outlooks for, South Korea was one of 7 whose forecasts they raised. And the world is watching, of course, how the U.S. presidential election turns out because it could have a big impact on the global economy. The South Korean think tank says the country's economy could expand up to 0.4 percentage points if Democratic candidate Joe Biden wins. Jeong has the details.
The results of the U.S. presidential election could have a big impact on global trade as the two candidates have very different trade policies. A report released by Hyundai Research Institute suggests that if the U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden wins the race, the South Korean economy could grow by up to 0.4 percentage points. It also said that South Korean exports could increase by between 0.6 and 2.2 percentage points if Biden becomes the next president. It said the U.S. economy is expected to see stronger economic growth driven by an expansion in physical spending and an increase in wages for the middle class, which in turn could have a positive effect on the South Korean economy. An expert said if Biden wins, it'll also end the 4 years of President Trump's protectionist America First trade policy.
Biden said he supports a multilateral approach and will solve trade disputes in line with the WTO system. This means global trade orders will be adjusted considering the interests of many countries, and this system is deemed more favorable to South Korea.
Another expert said, although Biden appears to be inching closer to victory, if Trump refuses to concede the race, uncertainty surrounding the election could have a negative impact on the South Korean economy.
Political uncertainty in the U.S. could negatively affect the business sentiment and momentum of South Korea's economic recovery as the country heavily relies on exports.
The expert also said, should Biden win, exports in eco-friendly industries, including renewable energy and electric vehicles, will benefit, whereas if Trump wins, the tech-heavy sectors will benefit. Jeong, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, stocks up big time overnight on Wall Street. Investors seeing some good, apparently, in the results, such as they are of the U.S. election. What's happening in the global markets?
Yes, if you look at the U.S. market, Dow Jones jumped more than 2%. S&P surged another 2%. NASDAQ climbed more than 2.6%. Clearly, it was a very good day, and it seems that Wall Street continues to surge, extending a 3-day rally as the eminent Democratic candidate Joe Biden might be winning the U.S. presidential race. And divided Congress maybe will result into no additional tax increase for the large companies. And if that's the case, market is taking that as a positive indication. Also, if you look at the macro side, the initial weekly jobless claims fell to 751,000 for the week ending October 24th, down by about 40,000 from the previous week. And also on the corporate side, the shares of Qualcomm and General Motors showed a significant outperformance relative to the market because the earnings are coming in much better than expected. Particularly the 5G sector, the Qualcomm shows that there's a significant increase in terms of the investment resulting into high level of sales growth rate. It shows YOY growth rate of over 30% and the earnings growth coming in at over 70% YOY. Clearly, these kind of news will have positive implication for the global market. Right now, however, though, because Trump have declared that he's going to go to the Supreme Court for the presidential candidacy, if that happens, then uncertainty could happen. And therefore, if you look at the global market, it was kind of flat in general today in terms of Asian market. And also European market showing some correction. And if you look at the futures market for U.S., it is showing some corrections. So we'll have to watch over the weekend how this presidential election plays out. We think that the likelihood of Biden winning is high, but nevertheless, it seems that the uncertainty still remains.
Indeed. And in Korea, that was reflected in the Kospi, just up and down all day long today. The Kosdaq closed a little lower, though. What's driving the trade here in Seoul?
Yes, as you said, because of this uncertainty of the political arena where the U.S. presidency has not been declared yet, the Kospi showed a slight rise by about 0.1%, and Kosdaq was down close to about 1%. Clearly, volatility is there because of the uncertainty in the political arena. But if you look at the overall economic numbers and the COVID-19 cases, it seems to show that Korea is in a right track for recovery. And if you look at the new COVID-19 cases, it came in at around 125, which is clearly much less than anywhere else in the world. And also, if you look at the local data, the current account surplus is hitting the 2 years high as export rebounded for the first time in the last 7 months. And clearly, Korea is showing sizable current account surpluses and the trade surpluses, and that results into relatively better economic growth rate than any other countries in the world. So COVID-19 is putting a damage for the global economy, but less so for Korean economy, and therefore Kospi in a good position to rebound further if the political uncertainty settles.
Well, with that uncertainty and then the pandemic as well, the Fed has decided to keep rates at 0 to 0.25%. What do you make of that decision, Mr. Yu, and how might this influence the Bank of Korea?
Clearly, this is a positive news for the equity market as well as the central bank decision for Korea as well, because the Federal Reserve have left the target range for the Fed fund rate at unchanged at 0 to 0.25% during this November meeting. And policymakers seems to take a wait-and-see approach to the U.S. presidential election uncertainties. And if the fiscal policy passes, that results into the higher inflation and economic recovery, then maybe the Federal Reserve might think about the raising interest rate. But at the current point in time, I don't see that happening anytime in the next 6 to 12 months. If that's the case, then clearly the low interest rate environment and high liquidity would have positive implications for the global market as well as the other central bank. And the Bank of Korea will probably keep the current rate unchanged in the future as well. And even though economic growth rate is relatively better than other countries, but nevertheless, it is very weak. And inflation numbers are really weak as well. So unless the inflation picks up to well above 2% level, I don't think that any central banks will raise interest rate or reduce the liquidity in the current system. So continuation of ample liquidity will result into the equity market showing relatively positive trend over the next 6 to 12 months.
All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
South Korea recently expanded its social distancing system from 3 different levels to 5 levels so they can make more detailed adjustments depending on the situation. That system takes effect tomorrow. There'll also be fines for people and businesses who don't follow the rules. Kim Hyun-sung reports.
South Korea's new 5-tier social distancing measures will take effect from this coming Saturday. The whole nation will now be subject to the new and improved Level 1 social distancing measures. Except for Cheonan and Asan, in Chungcheongnam-do province, which upscaled their defense against COVID-19 to level 1.5 after seeing recent increases in cluster infections. The level of distancing measures will be determined by the weekly number of confirmed cases. Distancing up to level 2 can be applied on a regional basis. However, once the level reaches 2.5 or above, restrictions will be implemented nationwide. The new measures outline specific prevention guidelines for each situation. But regardless of level, wearing masks, disinfecting, and contact tracing is vital. Facilities or businesses that fail to adhere to these rules will have to pay a fine of some $2,600. Likewise, customers aren't free from this responsibility because if they're spotted not following distancing guidelines, they also face a fine of $90. Also, the mandate on masks will start next Friday. Kim Munsan, Arirang News.
The city of Seoul is going to add about 8,000 more bicycles to its system of public bike rentals. And these new bikes are not only sturdier, 2,000 of them are in a smaller size so they can be used by children. The bikes will start appearing on the city's streets by the end of the year. And Seoul aims to replace the whole of its current fleet with the new models by 2022. Seoul has hired 140 people since August to disinfect the bikes. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.